The history of Australian rock has one recurring theme. It's the story of music described as alternative becoming the mainstream. As the century ended, new technology allowed more people than ever before to make their own music and to get it heard.
I think things are also becoming more tribal. There's not, again, talking about pop music, when I was younger, pop music was more of a homogenous format, but pop music is wide open these days.
Suddenly, there were many forms of popular music, and the notion of a music mainstream began to disappear.
The diversity seems to be the defining factor of Australian music. We don't sound like, a lot of the big bands in this country don't sound like American bands.
For rock and roll artists, the biggest challenge was to breathe life into an old dog before they were swamped by an enormous tide of beats. Dance music.
I think as a form of music, I haven't actually heard much truly what I'd call remarkable rock and roll for quite some time.
One last time, let's look back. When three brothers strutted down a Miami street in 1977, they started the whole world dancing, and most of Australia with it.
Whoa! Welcome to the countdown of the Saturday Night Fever grand final of all the dancing.
They were expatriate Australians, but this was not a source of pride to the local rock fraternity.
One stage I did set fire to a whole pile of disco records and announced that disco was dead. I think within weeks, 3 disco songs were in the top 10, so it wasn't a great gesture.
Gradually, disco became dance music, with a strong connection to the celebration of gay culture.
It was the basis of the interest in dance music for sure. Disco really, in a way, from my concept, it evolved out of my interpretation is that it evolved out of gay culture, disco music.
Then as now, there was one thing really clear, at least it seemed to us, and that is that kind of homegrown, real music, sort of stuff that for us came out of our own experiences and was tough, was loud and sort of worked with youth, was trying to find a place amongst this welter, these waves of disco releases and pop releases that kept on breaking on the Aussie shores.
The media jumped on dance culture. It focused on the drugs, the sexuality, the people, anything but the music, which radio refused to play. It was a subculture exploding underneath the radar.
I used to delight pulling up at a set of traffic lights with, some sort of music pumping out of the window, just, which just going on and on and on like a tape loop, and just people looking and going, what the fuck's that,
Parties became an art form in Sydney's Oxford Street. Jack Vidgen's private house parties grew into the notorious rat parties, events that set the tone and style of Australian dance music culture.
The parties, in a way, in the 80s, in the mid-80s anyway, were very much a little mini festival with a dance music kind of base, but with performance by dancers and mime artists and musicians.
Oh, I was completely blown away for a start. It was like, just at the open sexuality, the completely open drug taking and the music.
The only thing like that happening at that time was Mardi Gras and Sleaze, and so it developed from that base. And then I think, in a way, there must have been a kind of void, but in a way we created the demand.
Judge everybody, and they don't try and pick fights, and they don't, it's like they're just who they are. They're their own person,
The audience was the party. The audience was the band, kind of thing. It was more a democratic thing. The problem I had with it, I felt it was completely, although the culture part of it was ours, but musically it was virtually all imported. My thing was really trying to sort of get our own sound and our own culture sort of going.
Dance music was rock's biggest threat. It was subversive, flirtatious, dangerous, exactly what rock music had been. Rock was now politically correct, safe, inert.
I've seen them about 10 times, and I reckon they're better than U2 in some aspects because they actually talk to the audience.
90% of the cover bands are shit. As long as they keep the crowd entertained, and I mean, we're so pissed and whatever, that half the time we can't tell the difference.
Those people started to look ridiculous. It started to... Punk rock was required again.
It was an eclectic band of misfits that took up where punk had left off in the early 80s. Their challenge was to make that sound relevant and exciting in the 1990s. There was nothing left but to get downright offensive.
Yeah, we went through a couple of different names, but it was a natural name because
we were like 15 at the time, and the Hard-Ons just seemed something perfect to offend everyone. When you're a little kid, it's like, let's call ourselves the Hard-Ons.
Well, and plus a lot of our lyrics were about, in the early days, were about being a teenager or being at school and stuff like that. I think a lot of kids related to it.
The Hard-Ons came from a punk rock tradition in Australia that started with Radio Birdman.
Even back then, the Australian stuff really impressed us because it seemed to be a lot more savage than the stuff from overseas.
The sky was big and empty, my chest filled to explode.
At the same time, Melbourne's Paul Kelly was taking a different route, rediscovering the humanity of a good lyric.
It's a wide open road, wide open road. The Go-Betweens and the Triffids were really big influences on me, and as songwriters, the Saints, Chris Bailey, Parallelly Tonight, Dublin Tomorrow, play over and over again, that little EP. In the Mirror, I had a dream, I saw the world at war. I mean, there was lots of, they got married, they sort of, I could play a whole lot of stuff. King's Cross, it's 13 hours on a bus. I press my face against the glass and watch the white lines rushing past. And all around me felt like all inside me, and my body left me and my soul went running. Have you ever seen King's Cross when the rain is falling soft? I came in on the evening bus from Oxford Street, I cut across. And if the rain don't fall too high, everything shines just like a postcard. Everything goes on just the same. I was writing songs for quite a few years and I guess muddling around, and then From St Kilda to King's Cross was a fairly early song for me that I felt that I was onto something. I felt, I'm onto something here, and I was very aware that it was more like a Chuck Berry kind of song where you named names and places. You see them all, they're little movies, and So I was heavily influenced by that.
Kelly's melodies were sweet, with a touch of Jack Kerouac. Others were making different approaches. Tex Perkins came from Brisbane's musical fringe with his band The Dum Dums. He had a passion for country music, but strange and loud.
I'm going to make my point and shout it.
Kim Salmon was making Perth sound like the world's biggest swamp with his band The Scientists. They came together as a hard rock supergroup, the Beasts of Bourbon.
Providing what most of the rest of the record industry wasn't providing for. It's the poor forgotten 5% that enjoyed the really fucked up weird shit.
It was more like collision than collaboration.
A lot was going on in, I call it credible hard rock. Right? History would tell you now, though, that Nirvana and Seattle grunge came out of a void. But between the Sex Pistols and Nirvana, there was a lot of other credible hard rock going on, and a lot of it happened in Australia.
Tony Cohen produced the Beasts of Bourbon's first spontaneous album. Their muse, as ever, drugs and alcohol.
The Axeman's Jazz, the Beasts of Bourbon first record is a legendary record, I think. In fact, it was done so quickly, I think it took about 8 hours at the most, that I was in Germany once in a cafe and I heard this music and I thought, gee, that's familiar. That's so familiar. I finally figured out it was Axeman's Jazz they were playing. But that was done 8 hours. I got $100 for it. I remember at lunchtime running up the cross and scoring with it.
Many times I've said, I'm never working with junkies again, but you just don't work.
That's the first time I met Tex and Spencer and Kim, which was obviously led on to some other great stuff. And this is the first time I'd ever tried anything live to 2-track, which basically means you're doing the final mix while they're playing it. So everything, at the end of the day, there's the record finished, mixed, that's it.
I saw my ex again last night, Mama. She was at the dance at Miller's store. She was with that Jackie White, Mama. I killed them both and got buried under Jenkins Sycamore. You think I'm psycho, don't you, Mama? Mama, pour me a cup. I'm psycho, don't you, Mama? You better let them lock me up.
That's a magic moment. It was like everything was working really well. People were just at the right level of out-of-itness, if there is such a thing. And the band obviously was really inspired at the exact right time to record them and all that sort of thing. So it worked out beautifully. And I think the finished result's really quite spectacular. Except that if I hear the mixing, I don't like my mixes on it because they were done too quickly. I'm like, oh.
At the other end of the pop music universe, Australia's success at fabricating soap operas was having an unpredictable side effect.
Kylie came into Mushroom through, the guy got me a demo of her doing The Locomotion, and I listened to it and I thought, old song, a bit hitty, it's okay, but, what is it? And a few of us were a little bit interested, but I didn't know that much about Neighbours, even though it was already successful here. I went to England. I stayed with my sister, and my niece and nephew were about 13 and 11 at the time, and they kept going on and on about, have you been to Neighbours? Is the street near where you live? This girl's, it's just, and I started to think, didn't someone send me a tape of a girl from Neighbours? So I said, we got Kylie in. And she was so innocent, so sweet. Certainly I never thought she could turn into the sexy woman that she is. And she was just eager, and because of that interest in England, we just gave it a shot. And sure enough, the Locomotion went #1. It actually went #2 in America as well. And all of a sudden, we were fitting into schedules of neighbours and sending it to England, and it just exploded.
The rock music critics gave them a caning, but English record producers Stock, Aitken and Waterman took Kylie and her neighbour's Bo Jason to the top of the charts, with a sound as light as bubbles.
It's very dance orientated and it's very heavy beats and stuff like that they don't know, they can't play any instruments. They play the keyboards. They're musicians.
There's no reason to leave because they're getting a lot of criticism.
Yeah.
The reason they're being criticised is because they're so successful.
Yeah.
It would be some years before her records would acquire credibility, but they sold on the strength of Kylie's niceness.
We snuck around the back and really took them at their own game and absolutely slayed it with pop music. Kylie Minogue's album to this day would be one of the top 10 selling albums in England of all time. It sold nearly 2 million copies. People in Australia did not realise how big she was there. She was enormous. She was the next biggest thing to Princess Di.
It seemed that becoming a soap star was now the first step in a successful singing career. The music behind the soap stars was strongly influenced by the growing underground dance scene. Suddenly, anyone who had a spare $2,000 to spend on a computer could create high-quality music in their bedrooms.
So first up, we've just got a drum beat going. We'll add a drum loop to get it a bit funkier. Okay, now let's add our synth part. So we've got a little synth part happening here. Well, for sample material, you can use anything. This is Chuck. He did the vocals for Howling Dog. Say hello, Chuck.
The explosion of dance music also coincided with the arrival of a new designer drug. Ecstasy became known on the street as disco bickies.
Automatically you sort of slip into it. It's like some kind of trace memory. It's like if you look at say voodoo ritual or any kind of like tribal customs and rituals and stuff like that.
I think it kind of went hand in hand, that whole notion of just abstract sound and rhythm and layers of rhythms and textures and stuff like that. I think that was Ecstasy's impact. It was like just the freeing up of what it is that we're listening to.
The dance music tribe were now gathering outdoors in ever greater numbers, borrowing from an English phenomenon, rave parties.
That was possibly another really liberating experience as well for loads of kids in the suburbs discovering these parties that were initially coming from the Darlinghurst core, but it opened up what it is the experience of going out and dancing is anyway, and how people relate to each other.
There's something about dancing all night and watching the sun come up that has this powerful resonance in every human being. And it's something that Western culture's missed for a very long time. We used to have it, and that's a big part of the attraction. I mean, there's the obvious sort of psychedelic abuse and all that kind of stuff, but I think it's a powerful force.
The one thing dance and rock had in common was the need to recapture something lost. Primal contact through music.
Yeah, well, I've always thought we were a dance band, I mean, people often say, like, how come you do this sort of dance, where does it come from? And I always used to think, well, I'm dancing to the music. It's dance music. I mean, it's a certain kind of dance music. It's not triggered off necessarily machines, and it's not always got the syncopation that dance music has. The Oils thing is much more thunderous, it's much more primal, it's more like a wave breaking than a train moving along. But it's still dance music.
The continuing search for something new led to the oldest thing we had, the outback. Midnight Oil took up an invitation to tour remote communities with the Warumpi band in an effort to find some musical meaning. They found the communities were rocking. Out in front of the Warumpi band was an Aboriginal rock star, George Jalunga from Papunya, Australia's answer to Mick Jagger.
99?
89, wasn't it? 1882? No, that's not right.
No, 79.
1980. Middle of 1980. Papunya.
Yeah.
That's where I started jamming with Samuel.
19...
You come out.
79.
You come in
1980.
80. You come in 81, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, 80. I remember you coming... I was in that flat. You walked past, I was playing that didgeridoo.
We feel that if we're going to truly reflect feelings and issues and matters which are of concern to Australians and a part of the Australian ethos in 1986, then we need to go out there and see them firsthand and be a part of it, if you like.
So, how many of people's families here would have been shot and killed?
They just spread a bit of poison on the piece of bread and give it to them just like a dog. And my uncle got shot and my father escaped.
And I think that Midnight Oil's always had a direct relationship with the people that it's played to anyway. These people out here won't often get an opportunity to hear or see a band like this. Well, play out there was fantastic because it was so quiet and we were making so much noise. But just the landscape and the people, it was totally different from the city, and it was a timeless land which had this extraordinary atmosphere, and I think it's probably an experience all of us will remember. And playing with the Rumpis was a real trip, and they were a really very fine band then.
I started singing, following Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Angels, Status Quo, all this sort of rock and roll band that got a tight sort of... AC/DC.
Yeah,
got a bit of a rock music in it. I could feel it, I could feel it. That's the one I want to be like him.
Stand up and be counted. Stand up, everybody. Stand up and be counted.
All you can see is these incredible sort of kids down the front, because the kids all come down the front and they just do this amazing kind of stick insect sort of dancing thing. And occasionally, if they were getting out of control, George, the singer, would scream at him in language, which was wonderful. We didn't know what he was saying, but we got the gist of it. The rhythm section were the Butcher Brothers, and they were a marvellous rhythm section, real Stones rhythm and blues rhythm section. And I can remember a night where we played in a small community called Mandawuy, up in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and it was perfectly still. There was a small line of hills about 1,000 metres away from the stage.
Kids would be down the front. They just jumping up and down like rabbits, dance for a bit, then drop down again as soon as the music stops. Maybe over that side you got a group of girls dancing together.
And then about 500 metres back were the older people who were just sitting on rugs quietly, and then there was a line of hills and you could just see little bits of spin effects and sort of scrub above the hills, and it was moonlight. And they were playing, and it's an absolutely unforgettable memory, especially as parts of the sound just drifted back off the hills, and these kids were all down the front just getting into it. It was magic.
If Peter Garrett had once thought disco sucked, he was now inspiring dance moves.
I don't know about encore. When you finish
the set,
you go off, everyone just gets up and leaves. So don't stand there and go, hey, more, all this. None of that stuff. They're just up and gone. Take the blankets and go. Dogs.
That's it. Let's go.
So it was very different for Midnight Oil when they were out there.
I think it influenced us musically. I know it affected Rob and Jim and Martin in the way in which we started to put together the Diesel record. It became more rhythmic, it had more of an acoustic end to it. I think it also affected us because it actually made us understand that these people had been living in this place since time immemorial. You know, they'd been telling their stories here for tens of thousands of years, and they knew the land incredibly well, and they could tell you a lot about it. They had a great knowledge.
Don't speak your tongue. White man came top everyone. We don't serve your country, don't serve your king. White man, listen to the
Despite the rock music drought in the late 80s, this collaboration really broke through to the broader culture.
We carry in our hearts the true country, and that cannot be stolen. We follow in the steps of our ancestry, and that cannot be broken. We carry in our hearts the true country, and that cannot be stolen. We follow in the steps of our ancestry, and that cannot be broken.
Musical reconciliation was underway, and there was hope for all those mining different seams of sound. Strangely, to quote Tex Perkins, it was the 5% of fucked up weird shit that began rising to the top. In 1990, radio station Triple J went national, creating a massive impetus for the rock market. Salvation had arrived for those who wanted to take rock somewhere else.
Triple J. Don't go now.
One of the first success stories was an inner-city guitar band.
Everyone thinks that Silverchair were the ones that drove the excitement factor up for Australian music in the 90s, but it wasn't. It was Rat Cat. Rat Cat were the ones who got the kids excited again in Australian music. It was like, I don't know, it was like Sherbet in 75 on Countdown. You know, the kids screaming there, and that level of excitement at seeing some of the big Rat Cat shows, it came out of nowhere.
Rat Cat's success was short-lived, but it was a warning of future directions. Atlantis Recording Studios in Melbourne was instrumental in changing the mood.
Musicians, sloth, lust, envy, gluttony, greed. I think we got a hit on our hands.
You're just a hit, baby. Oh.
Dave Graney's album, The Night of the Wolverine, was an unlikely success.
Richmond Recorders was more a meeting place for drugs first and music second, but Atlantis was music first, and that was terrific. So Dave Graney, like anyone else, would grab any sort of genius that might come through the door and whack him on the record.
The major seventh is a Dave Graney chord. The birds and the bees, yeah. And I already knew the major seventh before I met Dave, but he did show me a few cunning variations.
That's probably why people dropped in all the time, because there was usually something interesting happening. And during the Night of the Wolverine album, there was a lot of really good stuff happening. It was probably the height of that Atlantis studio then around that time it was being done.
No one had acted quite like this in Australian rock and roll before, or described the rock lifestyle so eloquently.
Hell, free beer and chicken, man, and hotel rooms and alligator shoes and black tape over the window and one strong suitcase, a scarf over the lampshade, going to bed in the morning, breakfast in the afternoon. Love ya, love ya. You next time I'm passing through, Night of the Wolverine, yeah.
With a new take on Americana, an old hipster was cool with the kids.
Triple J was starting up around those early 90s, and we really felt the effect of plugging into something national. It's amazing the power it has in country areas, and they really identify what Triple J says is good is good.
Tex Perkins, backed by a new band, The Cruel Sea, combining roots, reggae and the surf sound, was another to receive the Triple J stamp of approval.
Let's talk in terms of that Juice magazine and Rolling Stone can understand. The old guard was just tired, and the new guard wasn't quite ready to come through. So our success sort of came when, our big success came when people were going, well, what is there? What else is there out there?
Broke down at a truck stop. Got wet sweat under a hard top. The wrong directions are shown. Threw up in the men's restroom. This is not the way home.
The Cruel Sea were just one group looking for the way home. But before they got there, a sonic earthquake hit.
I think the record companies swooped on indie guitar music because of what was happening in the States. Basically, Nirvana blew the whole music mainstream recording world apart.
Originally known as the sound of the scientists, grunge had really come from Perth, via Melbourne and Sydney to Seattle.
The Scientists, for instance, pretty much kick-started the grunging in Seattle, Nirvana, worship Scientists.
Nirvana broke, and suddenly 10 years was wiped out, and Europeans didn't particularly care about us. There was it was coming. There was lots more of it coming from another place.
We've always been the forerunners of things like that, and just never had any recognition for it. And I find that quite criminal.
I did actually, I must point out, I used the word grunge in relation to the Scientists in interviews quite a bit in those early days. I don't know if anybody picked up on it. I wonder.
Guitar music was back.
You noticed there was a moment when all of a sudden people from the burbs started turning up to your gigs, and there were people who actually looked quite clean and a little bit out of place, and that was when you knew something was going on, people were cottoning on to this music becoming mainstream, I suppose.
There was a change, 92 to 94 or 5. It was just the guitar rock sort of. Everyone was a 3 or 4 piece with the same, no keyboards, strictly no keyboards back then.
I've got a new apartment, baby, and it protects me from the lonely whistling streets.
The record execs were open to any suggestion, even giving up creative control.
We had a buffer system with, we'd work with Red Eye, and Red Eye would work with them, so we didn't really have to sort of, suck corporate dick.
Honeymoon is over, we had a bigger budget, and so we sort of really got stuck into it. And particularly in the mixing, I was really, really serious about making the mixes really commercial sounding, really good on the radio and all that sort of thing. I wanted to make it so that radio DJs or whatever would just want to play it.
The Honeymoon is Over was a watershed record of the 90s. Created by musicians who'd spent years in the alternative ranks, sweetened with great production, and sold by the most charismatic frontman since Bon Scott.
Oh, well, you can't sleep in my bed no more, you can't ride in my car. I won't let you go for me, baby, it's never gonna get that far. I'm gonna send you back to wherever the hell it was you came. And then I'm gonna get this tattoo, change to another girl's name. Oh, it ain't no fun no more, I don't know what to say.
my shirts no more. You can't make love to me. I hope don't be your dick no more. It's the way it's gonna be. I should've left you, baby, back in that last time. 'Cause the kind of fool you made me, girl, I'll never live it down. Oh, it ain't no fun no more. I don't know what to say. The honeymoon is over, baby. It's never gonna be that way again.
The Cruel Sea became a national success story. Alternative had become mainstream.
Some of the songs I'd spend 3 days mixing just on the one song. And I know they thought I was a bit mad at the time because I was getting things like they'd come in the next day and I'm fiddling around with the snare drum or something like that on the song that I've been doing for 2 days. And I go, oh, Tony, you all right, sort of thing? You still on that song? Okay.
If indie guitar music was the new darling of the record industry, dance music was too anonymous. It desperately needed a face. Kylie was searching for a new image, writing her own songs and taking control of her career.
Really good how you tied me up last night. That was really, really great. I really love that. And I just think that...
Really, they just fell in love with her. A lot of people, including myself, mostly thought that she would have been a one-hit wonder, but she's just got better and better, reinvented herself, come out of herself, and she's become just such a great performer, and it's amazing that she keeps going in leaps and bounds.
Kylie's transformation was sensational. In 1994, she was the guest of honour at the Sydney Gay Mardi Gras. She became a dance music icon, making the genre more acceptable, less threatening, and much more popular with an Australian audience. Now that dance had Kylie as a weapon, what could rock hit back with? Three Newcastle schoolboys, with a song called Tomorrow, they broke into the world charts.
We were just jamming and Daniel just started playing this riff and we were all kind of like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then Daniel didn't actually like it, but I rang him up and said, oh, we should write a song to that.
We've been playing since we were like 12 years old in pubs to no one. We never got more than 10 people at a show until we were about 15. So that was 3 years of constantly just playing to our parents. And if we did play to anyone, they weren't really interested. We got put into the whole grunge category because it was such a garagey, heavy music term, and we weren't playing garagey because that's what we wanted to play. We were playing to the best of our potential.
We've got to ask you if you want to have a question to Silverchair.
Oh, what's it like being so popular and all the girls loving this?
How did Silverchair get so fast so quick?
What do you think's so good about Silverchair?
Have you got hair on your balls yet?
Nothing.
We'd like to know, why do you ruin all of your equipment?
What was the question?
Why do we destroy our gear when we could be giving it to them? Well, answer is we don't own it.
Trash.
We don't break it anyway. It's still usable.
We just put a few dents in it and give the instruments character.
Rock and roll was young again. Not since the 50s had kids taken control of their own music with such enthusiasm. Silverchair were more than Nirvana in pyjamas. They soon became the country's biggest rock export.
The band is Silverchair. And just basically partying on, man. Silverchair flew into New York City recently.
Silverchair.
Silverchair!
And the winner is Silverchair.
In the mid-90s, the ARIA Awards reflected the change in mood. Silverchair carried off Best Band, and in the great rock tradition, caused a sensation. Itchy and Scratchy were named Best Dance Act. They thanked their ecstasy dealers.
Wow, total spin out. This track was made at home in a bedroom, so anybody can do it. So, and all the DJs who play it, all the public radio stations, all the ravers, all the everybody, thank you very much.
This is Harvest by Neil Young, which is my mum's seed. Jane Matum, that was before she was married and became John.
Rock was now old enough to span several generations. For some, Mum and Dad's record collection could be a source of inspiration rather than disgust. And if Silverchair were reworking teenage angst, Paul Kelly was delivering his message to their oldies. The message was, music could make a difference.
An 8-year-long story of power and pride. British Lord Vestey, Vincent Lignari were opposite men on opposite sides. Vestey was fat with money and mustard. Beef was his business, broad was his door. Vincent was lean, but spoke very little. He had no bank balance, hard dirt was his floor. From little things, big things grow. From little things, big things grow.
If dance and rock were ever to combine, it would take an army of even wiser elders. Their inspiration would be anger at a promise made, not yet fulfilled.
There shall be a treaty negotiated between the Aboriginal people and the government on behalf of all the people of Australia.
Treaty was a song that was inspired by Bob Hawke, who came to Northern Territory in 1988 and had a bit of a yarn with Yolngu people and elders and leaders from Northern Territory and Australia.
Now Mandawuy, of course, you know, being a very political animal, I mean, it's the whole idea of writing the song in the first place. I mean, he had it in his head right from the start. He didn't just want to write treaty himself, he wanted to write it with me. He wanted a black man and a white man to write it, so he had that from the start.
Well, I heard it on the radio, and I saw it on the television. Back in 1988, all those talking politicians. West side easy, west side cheap.
Treaty was a surprising but natural fusion, the product of a politicised black man using two elder rock statesmen to get maximum attention for his message.
I don't know what I'm writing about when I sit down to write. I find out through writing. So it's very interesting working with a songwriter with a completely different approach, and we sort of hit the wall.
He was able to come and we sat down for a week or so and wrote lyrics for it that would be something that would open up the minds of Australian community.
And then, of course, he wanted to involve some other heavyweights. So we took it round to Peter Garrett, to the Midnight Oil office, which is just around the corner in Gillies in Sydney, for the lordly seal of approval.
And it sounded pretty good to me. And I said, I don't think there's that much more that should happen. But Mandawuy asked me to go into the studio and he was actually recording the vocals. So I went in and he said, how would you sing it? What do you think, how it should go? And I said, well, I think it's great, but, you just want to really attack it.
Come on, Treaty, yeah. Treaty now.
What really gave Treaty its big audience was that standard staple of dance music culture, the remix. The version produced by Filthy Luca went to #1 in Australia and became a dance hit in the clubs of London and New York.
They totally revamped the song. They took all the instruments off and put other stuff on and chucked out all the words. And I remember Gavin Campbell from Filthy Luca, he played playing it to me in the offices, and I loved it.
I was really blown away with this Filthy Luca remix because it had all the power. So, he was a single competitive to, say, a white band's product. So that's what made me that's what made me excited about it.
Tribalism was the message of the moment. But the new tribes needed their own stomping ground. Ken West was a punk band promoter from the 70s who saw an opportunity. He called it the big day out.
I see it as the first time a really full-on attempt had been to take on the urban scene. The idea of chucking a festival together, definitely in the past, was the out in the paddock in the mud kind of scenario.
At the inaugural Big Day Out, both Yothu, Yindi and Nirvana appeared. It quickly became a platform for live music. Start-up bands went from inner-city venues to national fame.
I suppose the thing about playing in the Big Day Out was that the crowd, you were seeing a massive crowd for the first time in front of you. You could actually see them. It wasn't in the middle of, a dark, smoky room. So you're seeing the potential of playing and reaching a lot of people. Just the audiences were so massive because they were coming to see these American and English bands, and somehow you got a free ride in the middle of it, which was kind of handy.
There was that time, and we had a song on the radio, and then you play the Big Day Out, and then you could play the Metro, which is 1,000 people and stuff, and yeah, there was money everywhere, and it was there was drugs, we had T-shirts, and guess what, Mum? Guess how much money? We got 1,000 people, and they paid $10. That's like $10,000.
The Big Day Out became a yearly event right around the country. Nick Cave was welcomed home as the Prince of Darkness and the grandfather of Australian grunge.
Apparently we're snogging, not enough singing and too much snogging. You are a Minogue, you are. This is where all the beauty comes from.
The ever-adaptable, remodelled Kylie Minogue was at his side.
Well, he'll wrap you up in his arms, tell you that you've been good, girls and boys. Well, he'll rekindle all those dreams it took you a lifetime to destroy. Well, he'll reach deep into the hole, heal your disappearing souls. But don't you worry, buddy, he ain't coming back. He's a ghost, he's a god, he's a man, he's a guru. Well, they'll
whispering his name through this disappearing land. But hid in his coat is a red right hand.
As the big day out grew, it began to incorporate rock's old enemy, dance music.
I guess the gathering of the tribe scenario, which was pretty accurate in terms of finding a safe haven for generally a lot of outcasts. And I don't mean outcasts in a bad way. I just mean people that can't quite find what they want.
I'm on the drug, I'm on the drug, I'm on the drug to kill River Phoenix. I'm on the drug, I'm on the drug, I'm on the drug to kill River Phoenix. I saw his body thrashing round, I saw his pulse rate going down, I saw him in convulsive throes. I said, I'll have one of those. Hillary had, Hillary had, Hillary had it in his...
Particularly the boiler room, the fact of having a rave experience, which it was like sweat dripping off the walls, quite manic energy level, and really, you know, a fusion of live music and DJs. But it was more just the crossover factor. You'd get kids, you know, seeing a band, then coming in, experiencing that. And sometimes you'd see kids coming in and not leaving, you know, like they'd just stay for the whole day.
So you ready to do some operatic singing over the top? A big black lady? Come on. Come on.
Slightly. A lot of bands are starting to use scratching, like DJ scratching and sampled beats and things like that. So there is, I don't know if there is actually a dance music, punk music war. I think there's more kind of a love-in between the two.
Gradually, the tribes began to work together. Regurgitator used dance to rework grunge. Silverchair chose Paul Mac to remix their single Freak.
Yeah, now we're all listening to all different kinds of stuff. Like, I listen to a bit of like kind of dance, like techno stuff. Not headache techno, the good techno, like kind of funky techno.
I used to like, you know, rock. When I was a kid, it was what there was that sense of like abandon and ecstasy and joy that I get out of a full-on guitar riff, that's also what I appreciate out of a full-on techno piece. So for me, they just go hand in hand, like particularly the Freak remix. It was just the best bits of both, you know? It was like Silverchair screaming and thrashing away, and the beats and synth screaming and thrashing away, and to me it just fuses completely naturally.
Well, that's a really good question, you know, because I actually really like disco now, so I'm not too sure. It survived, but so did we, fortunately.
Pop music could now borrow an underground feel from the dance world through that old rock and roll principle of do-it-yourself. Savage Garden went to the top of the world charts with recordings made in their Brisbane bedroom.
Anytime I need to see a picture, just close my eyes and I am taken to a pursuit of crystal mind. A magenta feeling, take a shelter in the base of my spine, straight like a chicken cherry cola.
Australia was now scoring more top 5 hits in the US charts than the British.
Something real. I'm wide awake and I can see the perfect sky is tall. When I kiss your mouth, I wanna taste it. Don't call me baby. You got some loving, baby, that'll never do. Everybody, absolutely everybody in the whole wide world. Everybody breathe and everybody needs.
As the century ended, there was one unique and unmissable opportunity for Australia's music tribes to come together. An audience of billions watched the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games opening and closing ceremonies, courtesy of Channel 7. It was as if the rat parties and sleazeballs of the mid-80s were taken to their logical extremes. With rock and roll integrated, Indigenous sounds exposed, and dad rockers resuscitated for the whole world to see.
Right.
One song summed it all up, written on a rock and roll tour bus by a white fella for his mate.
Something was keeping me awake, and moonlight, trees going past, I was looking at the landscape, everyone's asleep on the bus, about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking, oh, gee, I wish I was back in the tropical sea in that boat, you know. I'm thinking like this, you know, rather than going to Sydney. And then the words just come into my head. Just come into my head, you know, and I have suffered this exceptional longing to be back there rather than going to Sydney. City, you know what I mean? And it just comes, and as I was feeling the words, I was thinking about George and him singing it, so made the verses sort of relevant to him, you know. So he sings about being in the desert 6 years. And I'd been in the desert 6 years too, and I'd sort of missed where I come from, which is Western Victoria. I had the same feeling for home country thing, you know. And that's sort of all in the song, a feeling for home. Like your true home always waits for you, it knows you, you know.
The song was My Island Home, written by a rocker, performed by Christine Anu with a dance beat, and beamed around the world. It was a proud moment for all the Australians who struggled on the long, long way to the top. We were there.
Growing up in New Zealand meant you saw the world generally, but especially rock and roll, through a rose-tinted spectacles. When my brother got into a band, they really travelled, and at that stage no New Zealand bands were in any way interacting with the world, so every letter from him was like a romantic sort of diatribe from the other side of the world, and I just had these visions of grandeur. I had imagined Tim alongside Jimmy Page and Robert Plant at nightclubs, and in fact the truth was far from that. They were in a squat in London. Something about growing up in New Zealand, the isolation means that there's actually quite a bunch of eccentrics over there who are trying to break out of the conservative mould, and New Zealand was a very conservative country in the 60s. We were hanging on to our Britishness probably more so even than Australia. Well, I was only young anyway, and so really it didn't bother me. Being on the dole in England was, just all part of life's rich tapestry, and I loved every minute of it. Coming back to Australia, I suppose the band was questioning whether we had a commercial future at that time because we hadn't managed to sell any records. But we had a fairly passionate live following, and certainly back in Australia, it coincided with the release of the song Icy Red, which although wasn't a massive hit here, it actually did quite well and kind of found us a whole new audience. There was a lot of young kids turning up at the shows, and we became a pop band really. Having been quite a complex actually I don't know what the term was really, surreal vaudevillian art band or something. There was lots of adjectives thrown at us. But we discovered pop music and became a 3-minute pop band, and that was a big turnaround. We did a tour of Australia, immediately getting back from England, and it actually made money, and we had big crowds, and we played probably as well on that tour as we ever did as a band, I think. We all look back very fondly at that little period there, pre-True Colours. I just sort of feel that it's slightly unnatural to keep a group of people together beyond a certain period of time if the music is not continuing to evolve or get more interesting. It doesn't necessarily have to be getting more successful, I don't think, but at very least, rediscovering itself. And I just can't really believe that with one set group of individuals you can keep finding new angles on that partnership. Well, when I look back now, I think it was actually a much bigger undertaking than I sort of gave it credit for at the time. I think I was just I had a real urgency, and I was probably feeling quite ambitious, partly because of frustration of split ends, having kind of slid slowly down a slope, and the end being a little bit unsatisfying for everybody, really. And so I was in a hurry, and I embarked on it really with quite a sense of adventure. And in fact it was really, the band was pretty up for whatever came our way. We went to America, we recorded there for 4 months, some of which I had my family with and some of which I didn't. And really it was, there was no guarantees whatsoever. In fact, probably a likelihood that it would all end kind of badly. But somehow in the course of making that first record, we went from being the idea of a band to being a band, and I think I recognised it shortly after that record came out, and we started doing all these little acoustic shows that somehow we had chosen well, that the individuals actually were very compatible, and it was a very strong character to the whole thing. But it was kind of accidental in a way. I was in such a hurry to get going. We kind of hired Nick because he danced well at the rehearsal, and played really good bass on one song, which I know did make the record, which was a song of Paul's. But it was a pretty random thing. And he had some personality. He had like a pretty outgoing personality, so fortune smiled on us. I've never actually seen touring as being anything other than sort of necessary part of the whole process. Partly for me because it's the place where you find the soul of what you are, I think, on the road, and maybe that's growing up with the pub aesthetic in Australia where you got good really quickly, or you faced imminent bottling or, walkouts. And it really is, it's been stated many times before, but it's a great training ground, and the bands that came out of that era in Australia I think could all play really well. I sort of rely on my songs running away from me because my initial ideas are almost always random lines that fall out as the result of jamming really with myself, and I look at, suddenly I realise I'm singing a line, and I recognise that there's something good about it, write it down, and try and spit as much out without thinking as I can. And at that point then I want it to run away with itself. I look at it and I go, how am I going to make that into something with a thread, and it's chasing it down. So I think my songs always turn out to be surprising for me. I never really know what I'm writing about until it's finished, and sometimes not until a few years later where I recognise that there's a hidden meaning in one of the lines that I probably wouldn't have wanted to admit to at the time. But I also realised very early on that the world of, the glamorous world of rock and roll was kind of pretty vacuous, and it wasn't something I wanted to be part of, and I didn't really ever want to be famous for being famous. The idea of celebrity as an end in itself was not interesting at all to me.
Like everyone starts writing bad poetry about the age of 15, and I was the same. And I just didn't stop. So I was interested in being a writer, and I wrote poems and kind of prose poems and short stories. From my last years of school onwards, and it wasn't until later that I started playing guitar and then thinking, I can write songs. I'm from the school of songwriting is a human, desperate scavenging act, nothing to do with coming through the air or God. There's maybe a little bit of that, but the rest is just sort of, it's a scavenging. You're just getting pieces to fit. I would call myself, I'll call myself more pop. So if I'm asked to describe what I do, it's pop music. hate rock music. I'm sort of like Jonathan Richman like that, you know, he hated the term rock. It had to be rock and roll with him. But I like the word pop music because it's so wide. I think it's the beauty of pop music is that it especially now, I mean these days, it's a really, really wide term. If you say pop music, it doesn't just mean, you know, a classic 2 verses, chorus, bridge, you know, instrumental choruses out kind of song. I mean, pop music, all kinds of things are popular. And pop music, it's always devoured so-called underground music or more extreme music, more left-of-field music. Pop music's always feeding on that stuff and dragging it in some ways. And so I like that about pop music because that's sort of kind of my philosophy of music too, just like take whatever you can from wherever it is, wherever you find it, and bend it to suit yourself. People tend to think that now because communications are shrinking, there's all kinds of music from all over the world is available all the time, that you know, there's a tendency for everything to become homogenised, but it's also, I think things are also becoming more tribal. Oh, it's heavily influenced by Chuck Berry, and what I really admired about Chuck Berry was the way he kind of listed things in songs, or his songs were like maps, and his songs are very visual. You could see them. You could see the hamburgers on the open grill. You could see the coffee-coloured Cadillac. You know, Nadine, it's a guy jumping on the bus trying to chase Nadine, you know. You see them all, the little movies. If you're a singer and you want to and you're interested in singing and you want to get better at it, the only way to do it is just to play and play and play. And sing when you don't feel like it. You know, sing when the foldbacks shoot out. Sing when there's 20 people in the room. And just sing. It's just basic training. The drums went off on my forehead. The guns went off in my chest. I remember carrying the baby just for you, crying in the wilderness. Lost track of my friends, lost my kin. I cut them off as limbs. I drove out over the flatlands, hunting down you and him. The sky was big and empty, my chest filled to explode. I yelled my insides out of the sun. Wide open road, it's a wide open road, wide open road. So how do you think it feels, sleeping by yourself, when the one you love is with someone else? It's a wide open road, wide open road. Now you can go any place that you want to go. Wake up in the morning thinking I'm still by your side. I reach out just to touch you, then I realize it's a wide open road, wide open road.